Yo, what is going on, guys? Episode 76 of many. Yes, I am using the same intro there. So, I've got an interesting episode for you today. It's going to be educational. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting and some things that I've been learning over the last couple of weeks. If you listen to the pod, I'm always big on do your own research and every body is different. Every person is different, right? So, you've got the friends who've got a super high metabolism. They can eat whatever they want. They don't gain any weight. And you've got the other people who feel like they don't eat anything, and then as soon as they put something in their mouth, they're gaining weight, right? So everybody's different. It's all trial and error. You have to learn what works for you. I have mentioned in past episodes getting a test done on you. I forget what they're called, but basically you get an in-depth reading on how your body works and how it can function and foods that work well in it and foods that don't work well. And so I did mine through 10X Health. I can't remember what the name of the test is right now, but you basically get like a DNA test done. You do like a mouth swab or a spit test. You send it in, and then they can tell you kind of what meats, what foods, what veggies, all of these things that are good for you, bad for you. And the interesting one for me is I could see what like protein versus carbs versus fats, like how my body did with them. I learned that coffee or caffeine isn't great for me, but decaf is good for me. So it was affecting my sleep. I got rid of caffeine as a whole. The only thing I do drink is decaf. So anyways, I've learned these things. I've been doing my own studying, my own research on myself. Everybody's different. So that's where I'm going with that. So I have some interesting stuff I want to teach you or give you some insight on. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a nutritionist. I want to tell you what I've been learning over the last couple of days. So for those of you listening, if this is your first episode or if you're just tuning in, I have been doing OMAD, or 1 meal a day. So basically 24-hour fasting. And so the reason I started doing that was the last month, I've been shrinking my eating window down. So I've been going from eating at 8 in the morning and finishing my last dinner at 4 p.m. to eating at 9, 10 a.m. and then my last meal around 4. And I've continued to shrink that window. So I was getting it down to 11 or noon and then my last meal at 2 or 3. So I had a 3 or 4 hour eating window. And then as of basically the last 2-ish weeks, for the most part, weekends, I'm a little bit less strict on. I have shrunk my meals down to 1 meal a day. So it's easy for me if I stay busy. It is tough mentally because you feel like you see a time on the clock and you need to eat. It's breakfast time, it's lunchtime, it's dinner time, it's snack time, right? Our brain is telling us you need to eat, but our body doesn't actually need the food. It's just us humans overeat. We get bored. We don't have anything to do. We're sitting at home. We're not occupied. We just grab the food and we eat. So I've been doing this own study on myself. And at first I thought, wow, 24-hour fast or 1 meal a day is going to be super hard. I really don't want to eat 2,000 calories all in one meal. It's been working very great for me. One, I have more time throughout the day to do what I got to do. I don't have to think about food. I don't have to go to the gas station to buy a quick snack. I just eat. Either I go home quick and eat my lunch, or I work all day, and then by the time I get home, 4 or 5 o'clock is when I have my dinner. I prefer to keep my 1 meal a day right in the middle of the day. I don't I don't want to wake up and eat my first big meal. I want to stay fasted for a while and get my morning run and my morning lift in. And I don't like eating too close to bed, especially a bigger meal like that. So if I'm eating at 4:30, 5 o'clock and I'm getting 2,000, 2,500 calories in, that's just I feel like that's a big portion for me at that close to bed, because I do go to bed at 8, 8:15, 8:30. So only giving myself 2 or 3 hours to digest that big of a meal. I'd like to kind of keep it earlier, 1, 2 p.m., noon if I can, right? So anyways, I'm going to dive into what intermittent fasting is, kind of how it works, some of the specific pieces of the technical jargon that you don't really need to know, but I found it really fascinating. So today is Friday. This episode releases Tuesday. It's Friday morning. Got G, the producer, here. And last night, I told myself I was going to read for an hour. And instead of reading, I decided to pull up my phone. And I was just researching on intermittent fasting and trying to pull all this stuff together. Since I started doing that, I don't know if you guys ever get this, but when you're in the car and you heard a song and then 3 days later, you just don't know why the song's playing in your head and it just kind of keeps happening. Well, last night I researched this topic and I started learning these certain words and how they, the science behind it. And now my brain has been saying this word over and over and over. And so that's where I want to get to, because I feel like I need to talk about it so you guys can understand it. Now, again, everybody is different. So whether intermittent fasting is good for you or not, I do think intermittent fasting is good for the general population. I do think it's good for mental clarity. I do think it's good for mental toughness. I think it's good for other things other than just like what it actually does inside your body. So I do recommend it to everybody. I do recommend trying to shrink your eating window. Eating right before you go to bed, eating right when you wake up. Like, I'm going to kind of try to touch on those a little bit too, but it's just not ideal for us as humans. So the first thing I'm going to explain, and I've got some notes here so I can make sure I touch base on this, but intermittent fasting, what it is, if you don't know anything about intermittent fasting, it's, again, that eating window. If I eat from noon to 4 p.m., that's a 4-hour eating window. That means I have a 20-hour fasting window. So even when you're sleeping, you're fasting. As soon as you're done eating, that's when your fast would start, or that's when you're like no longer eating, right? So if my last meal, I finish eating at 4 p.m., that means I'm now fasting until my next meal. So now I wouldn't really say it's a 2-hour fast, right? If I eat at 4 p.m. and then 6 p.m., you're not going to brag about doing a 2-hour fast. This is like a larger window thing. So what is that eating window for you? Do you eat at 6 a.m. when you wake up before you go to work, and then you eat again at noon, and then you eat again at 6 p.m.? That's going to be a 12-hour eating window, right? 6 to 6. And then you're going to have a 12-hour fast, which isn't super optimal in what we're talking about today. So I think the easiest one is an 8-hour eating window. So it's a 16-hour fast. That's a very good habit to get into. I would still recommend shrinking it even more if we can. So like a 6-hour eating window. I do see really good benefits from it. So intermittent fasting is that window of not eating, right? So here's some notes. So, and we'll break some of this down. So just hear me out. That 0 to 4 hour mark of fasting, so after we're done eating, our glycogen is being depleted. The 12 to 16 hour window is when ketosis, I think, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm just reading notes here. Ketosis kicks up. Autophagy. This is the word that keeps saying in my head. I don't know why. Autophagy is this word that apparently my brain really likes. We're going to talk more about autophagy, but autophagy, so I don't forget, auto means self, and phagy, or however you say it, would mean eating. So autophagy means self-eating. That'll be important for later. So that 12 to 16 hour window, ketosis is starting to pick up, and autophagy ramps up. At the 24-hour mark, you get into deep autophagy. Your growth hormone actually spikes, and your insulin drops significantly. So this is also good. And then, so let's see what else I want to say on intermittent fasting. When you do intermittent fasting, I'm not going to go into all these studies. They say it's good for body fat loss, and really intermittent fasting, where we're going to go next, is you get into autophagy, and you get into ketosis. And I'm going to explain that next. So autophagy is the first one we're going to talk about. So autophagy means self-eating. This is what happens when we're fasting. Our cells are actually eating or getting rid of. The easy way to think of it is autophagy is the cleanup crew. So when you go to bed at night, the cleanup crew comes out and they go through your body and they're deciding what needs to get gone, right? So if you have one of the other examples was if you have an Airbnb, the longer it's vacant, the cleaner the Airbnb can get, right? So obviously, and then at a certain point, if it's vacant for too long, which we don't want to starve ourselves for too long, then there's like a scale. It starts tipping a little bit, right? The pipes freeze in the Airbnb. We didn't take care of it enough, right? We were just cleaning it up this whole time, but it wasn't being used. So autophagy is the night crew that comes in and cleans up all the bad cells, all the damaged cells, all the bad mitochondria, all of these things inside our body. Again, we don't need to go too technical, but autophagy it helps with like anti-aging and wrinkles and stress and all of these things. So it's cleaning up all the bad, so that way your body is reset. Now, there's studies out there that says if you do a 72-hour fast once a month, once a year, twice a year, whatever, that autophagy gets in such a deep state that it's really hard for you to get diseases similar to maybe even as strict as or as extreme as cancer and these other items. So autophagy does its thing. It really cleans your body up. It gets rid of all the bad cells, all of this, not mutations, but these things that aren't working efficiently. So that 36-hour mark fast is usually kind of that really sweet spot where ketosis is really popping off. And I'll explain what ketosis is too. So ketosis is when our body is functioning off of fat for fuel. So we're burning straight body fat to function. Like that's what our brain is fueling off of. So usually we're functioning off of, the calories that we have in. And once we get past a certain point, once our glycogen has depleted enough, there's like a for me, this is what I've experienced, is once my body has gotten rid of the majority of its glycogen. So around for me, that 18, 20, 22 hour mark of my fast, at first, this is when my brain was feeling kind of not a brain fog, but my brain wasn't working to max capacity. So if I came in here and sat and tried to do a podcast and just talk to you, my brain would have a hard time finding the words it wanted to find and just little things like that. That's how it was my first week of trying this 24-hour fast. So this week it was actually much better because I've got some new tricks that I'm going to tell you about too. So there's this a couple hour window that's goofy, right? And then we finally get into ketosis, where our body is really functioning well off of our body fat. And our body fat is being used for fuel. Our brain does really well utilizing ketones. And so that's a whole nother topic. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but you need to understand what ketosis is. That's kind of like the magic behind the fasting. People do a fast to drop a lot of body fat very quickly. So you do what's called a water fast. You can also have some bone broth, which we'll talk about. You can have coffee or black coffee that doesn't break your fast. And then you just drop a bunch of body fat very quickly. So the reason we're, autophagy is going, we're cleaning up our body. We're just, so anyways, autophagy is very interesting. It's triggered by nutrient deprivation. So low amino acids and glucose, this is when it decides to kick up. And so now, so it says here too, the key inducer is fasting, exercise, calorie restriction, and then it really peaks around that 24 to 48 hours of it into fasting. There's some really good studies done on autophagy. The guy in 2016 actually won a Nobel Peace Prize talking about autophagy. I haven't researched any of that at this time, but I've seen some studies come up regarding that. So here's some other benefits of autophagy real quick. It delays aging. It extends lifespan. Neuroprotection, cancer suppression. If you catch it in early stages, it can potentially suppress that. And then immune regulation. It removes the intracellular bacteria. So again, it's just all around a good thing. This is kind of above my head. I can't really break this stuff down for you, but autophagy. It's very interesting, very cool. Understand it. So now the opposite of autophagy, or the other thing that works here, is so now when I break my 24-hour fast and I eat, what happens is a thing called mTOR. mTOR is short for mechanistic target of rapamycin. I don't know how to say it. That's what it's telling me here. So the cool thing about mTOR is this is the crew that comes into your body and says, we've got supplies, let's build, let's grow. So now once I break my 24-hour fast, autophagy is shut off and mTOR kicks in, and mTOR is going through the roof, and it's all of my building blocks. Everybody in my body, all the cells in my body are, the supplies are here, let's build, let's grow, let's put muscle on, let's do this. And so when I eat protein and fat, because I am on the carnivore diet, and when I eat my meal, it's steak, eggs, and butter, typically. What happens is I'm not taking in any carbs, so I'm not really getting much of an insulin spike. When you eat a carbohydrate, your body, insulin and blood sugars spike very quickly. 5 to 15 minutes, it spikes. And when insulin does, I'm not an expert, but essentially what happens when insulin goes, your body opens up all of these ways, and it wakes everybody up. Autophagy stays asleep. mTOR is going, insulin's going, and insulin opens up your fat storages and says, let's store some of this for fat for later. So when we're cold in the wintertime, we've got body fat, right? So that's kind of what insulin does. So when we're consistently spiking our insulin all throughout the day and we're eating this junk food, our body can easily store that. Now, again, everybody's different. Everybody has different metabolisms. Everybody, again, the guy who can eat all the food in the world and he stays skinny, right? It varies. But generally speaking, insulin opens the doors to everything, including our fat storages. So for me, when I eat one meal a day and I eat my steak, eggs, and butter, there's protein and there's fat, and those get broken down into amino acids and then go to my glycogen storages. when we eat carbohydrates, it goes immediately to glycogen storages. So that's why like some people, when they work out, they want to have like a candy bar or a Rice Krispie before, because they get a surge of this glycogen spike, and you can get better pumps and more veins and vascular, right? There's these other things. I don't know enough about it, but it spikes insulin immediately. Now, when I eat my protein and fat, my insulin does go up. But in order to get to glycogen, it has to be broken down to amino acid and then go into my glycogen storages. So it's a slower process, much less of a spike, and it just is more like steady, if that makes sense. So now mTOR is going. It's taking in all these supplies and going, and we're building our muscle back. So that's mTOR. That's all I need to really explain to mTOR to you. It's just when mTOR is going, autophagy stops, and when autophagy is going, mTOR is not going, right? So mTOR builds and autophagy cleans, right? So that's what you need to know. Intermittent fasting, those are like the two phases that are going on generally. So let's go into, I've got a bunch of notes here that I want to talk to you about. So there's this really cool study. I haven't researched the study, but there's this cool thing that I'm going to talk to you about as well. So I have a note here, why eating close to bed is not optimal. So when we eat too close to bed, you should give yourself at least 2 to 3 hours before going to bed without eating. And so the reason is mTOR, this is just a reason, mTOR is going and it's trying to use these building supplies and replenish you, but mTOR can go up to 6 hours and then it'll shut off. So now if I eat 1 hour before I go to bed, mTOR might be activated and going, and autophagy is what needs to happen while we're sleeping. It needs to pick up, and deep sleep is the best time for autophagy to work and do its deep clean. So if we're eating too close to bed, we're screwing up the rhythm of autophagy that can clean out our system, because when we're sleeping, that's the best time for it to do its work. Getting into deep sleep, it allows autophagy to do what it needs to do. So if you eat 1 or 2 hours before bed, depending on how big your meal is and what you ate, that'll decide how long mTOR is activated for. Generally speaking, I would just try to do your best to not eat up to 3 hours before bed, so mTOR has a chance to do its thing and shut back off. Usually mTOR goes for about 4 hours, but again, depending on what you eat, it could be 6 hours. So depending on how large the meal, etc. So don't eat before you go to bed. Let autophagy kick in. Autophagy is what's going to allow us to, again, anti-age and get rid of these bad cells and prevent us from getting wrinkles and all of those. So if you live one of those rough lives and you've seen those people that have wrinkles on wrinkles on wrinkles, these could be things that are adding up to some of that, right? So don't eat close to bed. Your metabolism needs time to do what it needs to do. You shouldn't try to go, and it can disrupt your sleep again, and you're not going to get into as deep of a sleep. If you have trouble sleeping and you ate before bed, this could be a reason why. So yes, here it says, finish eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, aligns with your liver clock, and then enhances autophagy, right? So now there's what's called heat shock proteins or shock proteins, right? And the way that heat shock proteins work, I'm sure you guys have all heard of the cold shower, the cold plunge therapy. Everybody's like, why would you want to do that? Now, there's reasons like, again, the mental toughness. It's the hard thing to do. It makes my brain just like, you know what? I did something hard today. So there is that benefit, the mental aspect. But what else cold therapy does is it sends us into shock, and it gives us these shock proteins. So your body is under what we call stress, and autophagy kicks in. Essentially, your cells respond to stress, right? So if we do a cold shower, if we go for a run, if we do a lift, anytime that we put our body under stress, that's what creates shock proteins. And these shock proteins are basically like a very fast, active way of like autophagy, like cleaning up things and getting the bad cells out. So our body goes into like stress overload and starts getting all this stuff out really quickly. There's benefits to doing cold therapy, elongated, like it's like brown fat is what it's called, brown fat activation or something like that. I'm not an expert here. And then what happens long term is you actually burn more calories throughout the day because of that shock protein that you've been released because of that stress that you put your body under. So not that exercising isn't enough, but if you exercise and extreme heat as well. So sauna, if you exercise, if you sauna, if you cold shower, if you put your body under stress in multiple different ways, it's all just going to stack up and really accelerate this process. So not saying you should do this 7 days a week of all of the stressors, because your body does need some time to not be under stress, but that's what a shock protein is. So when people talk about taking cold showers and it helps with burning fat, that's what's happening is our autophagy is essentially kicking in a very short window, and we're getting some benefits from it that way. So do your own research. I'm blabbing, but there is a good one for you. So I want to talk about this interesting. So actually, before I get there, so the day in the life of me right now is I'm eating one meal a day, and when I wake up, I am I'm not eating. I am making a couple different drinks. I've got my 32-ounce water, which I've got here with my salt in it to keep my sodium high because I'm only eating one time a day, so I need electrolytes throughout the day to function. Especially, I'm doing a fasted morning run. I've been running this morning I ran 4 miles, but typically I've been going for a 3-mile run in the morning every day this week. So I need to get my salt in and my sodium, so that's why I've got my water with that. And then I make 2 drinks. I make my 20-ish ounce coffee, my decaf. And for those of you that want to go decaf, do some research there. There's good decaf and there's bad decaf, depending on how they stripped the caffeine out of it. There's different filtration processes to get the decaf out, so it's important to do some research there. So I've got some nicer decafs. And then, so I make a decaf coffee in the morning. This week I tried for the first time throwing a tablespoon of butter in there. That was amazing. But when you're fasting, you don't need to do that. It will break the fast at a certain point. So my coffee is basically 0 calories, right? And then I have MCT oil. I put the MCT oil in there, 1 tablespoon, and that is about 120, 130 calories. And that's a 0 calorie drink until I put the MCT oil in there. So now I've got a drink that's just fat. And then I make a warm bone broth, about 15, 16 ounces. And my bone broth gets 2 scoops of collagen peptides put into it by Vital Collagen Peptides. And so that just gives it a little extra protein. So now my bone broth, for those of you that know, is just straight sodium and protein. And now I have 1 or 2 scoops of collagen peptides in there as well. And then I've got my coffee. So the reason I'm telling you this is those 2 things separately do not break my fast. I can drink those. They can help me get through the day. They're minimal calories, and they do not break the autophagy. That's what we're worried about. Sure, if you're on a strict water fast, it would maybe be considered breaking your fast, but this doesn't break the ketosis that I'm trying to get into. This doesn't break the autophagy process. So I wake up, I have my bone broth, I warm it up, and I've got my peptides in there, and then I take my morning pills, right? You guys don't need to hear all about that. So interesting enough, I thought this is what led me down this rabbit hole to begin with, is I was making my bone broth yesterday morning, and I had a brain fart. I was on my 48-hour fast, and I put my oil in with the bone broth. And so then I'm talking to Grok, or ChatGPT. I was talking to Grok, and I go, is it a bad thing that I put my oil in with the broth? And it goes, yes, get rid of it. Do not drink that. Throw it out. Give it to somebody else. Use it for later, right? And I'm like, well, what's the matter? Why is that a big deal? Well, because my broth is straight protein and the way my body can handle that, now I put a scoop of fat in there, essentially from the MCT oil. That would have triggered my body's response to say, you're eating something, you're having a meal, because I would have now had fat and protein in there, and I would have broken my fast and would have screwed up the autophagy phase, right? Even though it's still minimal calories, having the 2 together would have caused problems. So what I learned is that the way that my body takes in the broth and the collagen peptides is just straight protein. It's not high enough. It's not enough grams of protein that my body won't break the fast and it uses it properly. I have to wait at least 15 minutes before I can drink my coffee with the MCT oil because, again, I don't want the fat and the proteins coming together. So the way that the MCT oil and the coffee works is it goes straight to my liver and actually helps with my ketosis process. So having these 2 separate was something it didn't blow my mind, but I was like, okay, that makes total sense now that I think about it, right? So that's my morning process. The MCT oil actually gives you some extra energy throughout the day. So if you are attempting to do fasting, the bone broth helps with the sodium and giving you some protein to function off for the day. The MCT oil will also help with some fat in your system to also work off of. So anyways, that's my current morning routine. I haven't even started drinking my coffee yet today. So I will drink my coffee over the next couple hours. I don't rush it. I don't need it. So now to the fun part. Some of this research that I'm trying to do is figure out how to minimize. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. So I do drink some beers on the weekends with my family from time to time. I actually just tried my first Bloody Mary not too long ago, and I'm a real person. I'm not going to sit over here and say I don't have flaws. I do drink with my family, and I enjoy having a good time with them, listening to music, doing whatever we want to do. So for me, and how strict I am throughout the week, it's important to me that I don't just throw it all away by drinking beers on a Saturday, right? So I continue to do research and I try to figure out how can I optimize or maximize my gains, my results, not screwing up my entire week. So what I learned last night, and I have to do more research on this, but it's very interesting. It's what's called glucose supercompensation or glycogen loading. Definition: maximizing muscle/liver glycogen post-depletion via carb refeed. Now, that's not how I'm going to use it. So I am eating one meal a day, steak, eggs, and butter. And on the weekend, on Saturday, if I want to drink my beers, I am going to overfeed. So what happens is I do run in the morning. I do my fasted run and I do my fasted lift. This depletes my glycogen closer to the 0 to 100 grams or whatever, right? So my glycogen is severely depleted by the morning time and after my fasted run and exercise. And so the thought here behind this idea, glucose supercompensation, glycogen loading, is that if I overfill this, they call it a sink, if they overfill this sink of glycogen, this storage of glycogen, that when I do drink, I can't store any of that as fat or fuel, we'll call it. So what I'm going to try is to eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories for this is for me, this is my macros, my body type, my body fat, right? So 4,000 to 5,000 calories of steak, eggs, and butter, let's say Saturday, like late morning, early afternoon. It's probably gonna have to be two or three meals because I'm not gonna be able to get all that down in one sitting. So 4,000 to 5,000 calories in one sitting, in one day before I get to having any beers, let's say. So Saturday, I would eat my steak and eggs at 10 a.m., my steak and eggs at 11, noon or 1 or 2. And then what happens is my glycogen storages are now at 150 to 200% full, and it can't do anything else, right? So now what happens is when I go and drink the beers later in the day, or let's say I want to have a cheat day. Let's say I want to have a peanut butter cookie because my sister just made some really homemade fresh peanut butter cookies, right? I could have a cookie or two, and that when that cookie or two comes in, my body actually will burn that immediately as like heat. It'll turn into heat. So what does heat mean? It's just going to I'm going to burn it immediately. It's going to turn into sweat, right? I'm going to sweat it out. I'm going to pee it out. When you drink alcohol, your body has to process the acetate right away. Or the alcohol. So everything kind of gets put on pause typically when you drink alcohol. So now when it gets put on pause, instead of the carbs from the beer being able to get stored into my glycogen storages and potentially stored later for fat, it's seeing that it's overflowing and I don't have any room for glycogen storages, and I'm just going to pee it out and I'm going to sweat it out, and it's going to be like a mini workout, they were saying. So again, I haven't tried this myself. I'm going to try it. I'll report back on how I feel. They also say that it reduces your hangover by 70 to 90% because you have so many calories in you and your body couldn't store any of that for, later use or whatever. So glucose supercompensation, it's an interesting thought, but you overeat, you overstore on glycogen, and then, so I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting way to go about it. So I'm going to try it. I'll report back on the podcast on how that works. Again, I just thought it was very intriguing. So that is my current plan of attack. Now, I did have a couple other things that I wanted to touch base on, so let me check on that. Some notes that I'm finding here before that I've kind of left out. I had some notes prepped here. So when you do your cold shower, your brown fat activation is up, which means your metabolism is essentially up, and you're going to burn an extra 100 to 200 calories throughout the day from the cold shower, the cold activation. And then also, people also like to do it because you get what's called they say your dopamine surges, or you get an increase in dopamine. So you'll see a dopamine increase for the next, I don't know how long, 2 to 3 hours. You'll have more mental clarity, more focus, right? Those kinds of things. It also claims that you're going to be more resilient to stress and your HRV is going to be higher, which is cool. That's always a good thing. So let's also see here. Oh, I also have something interesting to tell you guys, and then I'll probably wrap up here because I feel like I'm just kind of going all over the place. But I have been running more. It's been something I've been working on. We're training again for the 5-mile turkey trot, and then we may even, and I'm going to say it out loud so I hold myself more accountable, we may be even doing a half marathon this spring. So something that I noticed when I first started running, when I first started getting into it, is that my sleep wasn't as good. And it's because my body wasn't used to that level of stress. My body wasn't used to my heart working that hard, especially for that amount of time. So I tracked my sleep regularly. My HRV was lower. My resting heart rate was higher. All of these like things were happening. And basically I was doing some research. It just said, stick with it. After 3 to 5 days, you'll notice it comes back. Your HRV will be higher than ever. Your resting heart rate will be lower. Like you'll be feeling better and you'll actually be getting deeper sleep. So the first like weekish of starting to run and transition this way, I did have not as good of sleep as far as, my HRV essentially was lower. HRV is very important for good quality sleep and you want to constantly improve your HRV as well, your heart rate variability. So anyways, I thought that was interesting and something I noticed. I did complete my first 48-hour fast yesterday. I ate on Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. and then I didn't eat till, what would this be? I ate Tuesday night at 4:30 p.m. I did not eat on Wednesday, and then I ate Thursday at 4:30 p.m. That was my first 48-hour fast. The week before, I did do a 42-hour fast. I am not going to go into like doing 48-hour fast each week. There are some studies on it, so I'm not saying go and be crazy like me and try these things on yourself. I do want to build up to the 72-hour fast. So something that I've noticed from me fasting is that I started off shrinking that eating window. I kept shrinking it, got busy one day, did the 24-hour meal, kind of rolled that into a couple days, got used to that, took the 24 hours a little bit further, got to like 27, 28 hours one day because I was eating my meals at like noon and then I got stretched out to 4:30. And so I was like slowly working up to this phase and like building the mental aspect of it. And then the one day I didn't get home till 5, 6 o'clock at night. I said, screw it, I'll eat tomorrow morning. That was last week when I did my first like 42-hour fast. That was into a Saturday, so I just had other plans and I wasn't going to be a prude and tell everybody I'm not eating or drinking today. So I did eat big that day. And then I decided this week I was going to do my first 48-hour fast, and that's what I did. So it was actually really good. I felt the day that I did not eat, I had a lot of energy. My brain was working right. I did have a couple like Zoom calls with clients and customers and business partners and all of that. So like everything was working, flowing. My words were good. I had an interview done on myself yesterday for another side project I'm working on. That was like an hour and 10 minutes, and it was mostly me talking. I felt good doing that, and that was on my fast. So I just think it's interesting. I think you guys might find it interesting to hear like how it was. And so overall, I'm enjoying it. The 2 nights that I went into, the 2 nights after the 24-hour fast, so kind of getting up to that 36-hour window, that night, what happened is I actually got the chills, which I guess is a good sign. That means my body is like getting deep into ketosis and burning fat for fuel. So the first night that I was at like that 36-hour mark, I got the chills pretty good. And then this last, Wednesday night or whatever it would have been, I still got the chills, but it wasn't as bad. So just interesting kind of things that I'm learning as we're going. Each of those days that I did not eat, I still worked out. I did my 3-mile run in the morning and I did my lift. So I still had enough energy to do that. If you do that and you're not like, I can do that because I work out all the time. I also have a very good sodium intake. Like I've got very good habits to support that. So I would not suggest, if this is your first time ever, to go right into a 48-hour fast, to expect your body to respond how it usually does, to try to work out, to try to run 3 miles. Like that might be difficult for you. So in the case you decide to do that and you go for a run, not saying you should or you're going to, if you get dizzy, it's best to lay down and get your feet above your head, right? You got to get your feet up. So if you're going to do any kind of fast, you need to have that bone broth in the morning. So you've got a little sodium and protein in you. You got to do your salt packets or salt your waters and make sure you keep your electrolytes up throughout this fast. So that's what I've got for you. I have been like learning a little bit more about some different supplements that I'm taking and trying that out. So I'll report back on that as well. But hopefully you guys enjoyed learning something about intermittent fasting. I don't think a lot of people understand that there is some really cool benefits from it other than just the mental toughness aspect. I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was talking to one of our trainers here and he's like, dude, it's just a mindset. Like your body, we're a creature of habit. So once you break through some of those thresholds of I need food at hour 18 or 20, you just become like, okay, actually I can do it, right? You have to prove to yourself that you can do it, and then you can break through that barrier and get there. So anyways, I want to educate you guys as much as I can. I hope you guys learned something today. There's a lot of kind of technical jargon. There's a lot of bouncing around. If there's something that didn't completely make sense or you want to learn more or hear more from it, shoot me a message on Snapchat. Shoot me a text if you have me personally. If you don't, add me on Facebook or Instagram, ColtonBurt19. Then we can have a conversation there. If you don't have me on Snapchat, it's colton.burt, COLTON.BURT. So I look forward to meeting you guys and having conversations. I have been getting more and more feedback through Snapchat. I've got a good group of people who ask questions. And my Snapchat obviously has a lot more of like my daily life, the meals that I'm eating. After I'm done with a run, I usually just post to Snapchat and say I've completed my run. I try to not necessarily be motivating, but I do try to show that I'm out here doing it. So hopefully you guys do it as well. I wish I did a better job at posting it on Facebook and Instagram. I just don't. I don't know why. I keep telling myself I'm going to. I just don't get there. So if you don't have Snapchat and you're debating getting it, like if you get it and just add me so you can just see what I'm doing and you want to talk to me that way, I do communicate very well through Snapchat. I've been brought up in that age where I was, in high school when Snapchat came out, and now it's just been it's basically my texting. It's how I communicate with people. So even a lot of our work chats are typically through Snapchat. So anyways, use it if you want. Don't use it if you don't want to. That's where a lot of the day in the life of me goes. If I am on an install for Priority Fitness, I will show pictures there as well. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Happy Friday. Even though you're not listening to this on Friday, I'm going to have a good Friday. Hopefully you guys enjoying your Tuesday, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.